Ever get that feeling? Like you're just staring at your computer screen, and the thought of just one more meeting makes you want to, I don't know, like run away and become a nomadic goat herder or something.
Huh?
Yeah, I think we've all been there. But, this deep dive isn't just about us feeling burnt out, right? This is about something much bigger. There's this whole, I don't know, growing sentiment, especially with Gen Z, it seems, that the traditional 9 to 5, yeah, they're kind of questioning that whole thing.
It's a really interesting trend for sure. And that's kind of why you brought me on, right?
Exactly.
Like help figure out what's going on. We've got all this research, these think pieces, even some, social media stuff to look at.
Yeah, it's a lot to unpack.
Yeah, a fascinating mix, really.
So let's dive in. One of the big things that jumped out at me from all this stuff we've got is that it seems like for this generation, work isn't just about money. There's got to be something more to it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, one quote I saw that really just gets to the heart of it was, what's the point of working at a job I don't enjoy? It's like it really gets at that shift in values, right?
Yeah. It's not just about hating Mondays. It's
Right.
got to be, I don't know, like your work has to have meaning, like some kind of impact beyond just getting a paycheck.
Totally. They want purpose. They want flexibility. They want work that aligns with their values,
Yeah.
and they're not willing to compromise.
And it seems like the rise of the gig economy plays a big role in this. It feels like everyone and their dog has a side hustle these days.
Yeah, that's true. I
Yeah.
mean, we've got info here about all those platforms like YouTube, Instagram, Etsy, even all the freelance websites for everything, writing, graphic design, programming, everything you can imagine.
So it's not just about making extra cash on the side. It's got to be about, I don't know, like having control over your work, building something yourself.
Exactly.
Hmm.
And it seems like Gen Z is actually pretty good at this whole entrepreneurial thing. I mean, they grew up with all this technology, with social media.
Right. It's second nature to them.
Yeah, there's this quote from one of the articles, and I think sums it up perfectly. It says, "Why work at a corporate job when I can build something on my own terms?" It's like, that's the attitude.
So wait, is the only way to find work that you actually like care about is to become some kind of influencer or start your own business? Because let's be real, not everyone can do that.
Yeah, that's a really good point.
Yeah.
And it brings us to another trend that's been making headlines, quiet quitting. Have you heard of that?
Oh yeah, quiet quitting,
Oh,
where
that's
everyone's basically doing the bare minimum at their job. Some people are calling it lazy, but I don't know, is that really all it is?
I think it's, I don't know, a little more complicated than that. Quiet quitting is more about setting boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
It's about pushing back against that whole work culture, the one that expects you to be available all the time, to be working constantly. It's about prioritizing, your own well-being
Mm.
and getting some control over your time and energy.
So it's not about being lazy. It's about being like strategic, almost like it's a form of protest against a work model that's, I don't know, outdated.
I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
And it all ties back to what we were talking about before, work-life balance. It's about finding a way to work that doesn't burn you out,
Yeah.
that lets you have a life outside of work. And the research we have, it really points to this being super important to Gen Z. They've seen what happens, when you buy into that always-on hustle culture,
Yeah.
and they're choosing something different.
And I feel like all this emphasis on mental health is a part of that too, right? They're not afraid to talk about burnout,
Totally.
about stress.
Yeah.
They want workplaces that support them, that care about their well-being. It's like a total rejection of that whole like suffer in silence mentality.
Exactly. Mental health is not taboo anymore.
Yeah.
And this generation, they're leading the way in making it normal to talk about this stuff.
And it's changing what people expect from work.
Absolutely.
More flexibility, more understanding,
For sure.
more support. So we've got this value shift, the rise of the gig economy, this focus on work-life balance and mental health. But what about technology? I mean, it's changing everything about work. We've got all these sources here talking about automation, AI, the whole shebang.
Yeah, technology, it's a double-edged sword, for sure. On one hand, it's automating all these routine tasks, which could mean people losing their jobs.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we've got some, kind of scary statistics in here about how many jobs could be automated in the next few years.
Yikes. I can see why people would be worried about being replaced by robots.
Yeah, totally. And that anxiety, it's pushing some people to, I don't know, to look at different kinds of careers, jobs that need creativity, emotional intelligence, all those human skills that are harder to automate.
Yeah, the things that make us human.
Exactly. But, technology is also opening up new opportunities, especially for people who are, comfortable with technology.
Hmm.
and who are willing to adapt and learn new things.
So it's like technology is shaking things up,
No,
making people rethink their careers and what they want to do.
for sure.
It's kind of scary, but it's also exciting at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. It's making us ask some tough questions
Yeah.
about what the future of work is going to look like.
Hmm.
I mean, are we going to see people completely reject traditional jobs? Is everyone going to become an entrepreneur or a freelancer?
Mm.
Or will companies adapt? Will they create new models that actually fit with these changing values and demands?
Those are some big questions. And honestly, I'm really curious to see what our sources have to say about how companies are responding. But before we get into that, we should talk about another big factor that's shaping how Gen Z sees work: social media.
Oh, social media, right. It's a whole world in itself.
It really is.
It's like Gen Z is seeing all these different lifestyles and careers
Mhm.
that they wouldn't have even known about before.
It feels like everyone's either a lifestyle influencer
Hmm.
or they're trying to be an entrepreneur. I mean, is that even realistic? Or are we just setting up a whole generation for like disappointment?
That's a good question. And our sources definitely talk about that tension, you know, between the picture perfect life that social media shows and the actual hard work of building a career.
It's like that whole FIRE movement, right?
Yeah.
Financial independence, retire early. It's everywhere these days. But is that even possible for most people? Or is it just, I don't know, a fantasy?
The FIRE movement is interesting. It's all about saving a ton of money and investing it. So you can retire early,
Mm.
but you need to be really smart about money to do that. And you have to be willing to live a pretty simple life. Not everyone can do that.
It seems like a lot of these things we're talking about, the gig economy, the FIRE movement, all of it, it comes down to wanting freedom and flexibility.
Yeah.
But can everyone really have that? Are companies actually changing how they do things to give people that kind of freedom?
Some companies are definitely getting it. They realize that if they want to attract good people, especially young people, they need to change.
So what are they doing differently? Are we seeing more remote work, more flexible hours?
Totally. Remote work is becoming more and more normal. And a lot of companies are offering flexible hours so people can, you know, take care of their lives.
It's not just about perks and stuff, though, right?
Right. It's about the whole company culture. Companies are starting to understand that work-life balance is important, that mental health matters. They want their employees to be happy.
Some companies are even trying to make a difference in the world.
Yeah, that's a big thing for this generation. They want their work to mean something.
So it sounds like companies have a chance here to create a better work environment for everyone. But it's not just about companies changing, is it?
No, it's bigger than that.
There's this whole conversation happening in society
Right.
about what work means
You're right.
and how it fits into our lives.
It's happening at the same time as all these other things.
Like economic inequality is getting worse.
Right.
Politics are super divided.
Yeah.
Technology is changing everything so
It's
fast.
a lot to deal with.
So our sources talk about this idea that the anti-work feeling is like a symptom of something deeper. Can you explain that a bit?
Yeah, it's not just that people are lazy
Yeah.
or
Okay.
that they don't want to work at all. It's more like Musk. They feel like the system is rigged against them.
So things like wages not keeping up with the cost of living, people feeling like they're not financially secure, that's what's leading to this feeling.
Exactly. It's like
Yeah.
no matter how hard you work, you can't get ahead. You're just stuck working to pay the bills.
Oh, yeah.
And there's no hope for a better future.
And that's where ideas like universal basic income come in, right?
Yeah.
That seems to be a hot topic in our sources. Can you give us a quick overview of what that is and why it's causing so much debate?
Okay, so universal basic income, or UBI, it's this idea that everyone gets a regular payment from the government, no matter what, whether you have a job or not.
Oh,
People who support it, they say it would help people who are struggling financially, it would reduce inequality, and it would give people the freedom to, I don't know, to start businesses or go back to schools
Yeah.
or just spend more time with their families.
that sounds pretty radical.
It is, but it's a complicated issue. There are good arguments on both sides.
So what are the arguments against it?
Well, some people say it would be way too expensive
Hmm.
and that it would discourage people from working. They worry that people would just become dependent on the government.
Yeah, I can see that.
It's a tough one for sure.
It feels like we're at a turning point.
I think so too.
We're asking these really big questions about work, about money, about the kind of society we want to live in.
Totally. It's not just about finding a better job. It's about rethinking everything.
Yeah.
How we work, how we treat each other, even how we treat the planet. It's about creating a better future for everyone.
That's a lot to think about. So we've talked about all these big changes, but what about us as individuals? How do we make sense of all this? How do we find our place in this new world of work?
That's where it gets, I don't know, personal, right?
Yeah.
It's like all these changes, they're forcing us to ask, like, who am I? If work isn't the same anymore, what does that mean for me?
Yeah, that's deep.
It's a big question.
It's like we've always defined ourselves by our jobs. I'm a teacher, you're a researcher. But what happens when those labels don't matter as much?
It's definitely something a lot of the articles you looked at talk about.
Yeah.
It's like there's this whole psychological thing going on.
Right.
If your whole identity is tied up in your job,
Mm-hmm.
and then that job changes or it's gone completely, you can feel lost.
Yeah.
Like, what's my purpose now? Who am I?
So how do we deal with that? How do we go through these changes without feeling like we're losing ourselves?
I think the key, and a lot of the sources point to this,
Mm.
is to remember that you have worth just because you're you. It doesn't come from your job title
Mm-hmm.
or how much money you make or even how productive you are.
That's a big change for a lot of people.
It is. It's like we have to unlearn this idea
Mm.
that our worth comes from what we do instead of who we are.
So how do we actually do that? How do we start separating our identity from our work?
Well, one way is to rethink what success means instead of it being all about, climbing the career ladder
Mm.
or making a ton of money. What if success was about personal growth
Mm-hmm.
or having strong relationships
Yeah.
or giving back to your community?
Or even just enjoying life.
Right, exactly.
So it's about finding fulfillment in different areas of our lives, not just work.
Exactly. We're not just one thing.
Yeah.
We have so many different interests and talents and passions.
I like that.
Work is just one part of who we are.
Okay, but that's easier said than done. What about someone who's really struggling with this? Someone who feels lost, who doesn't know what they want to do. What advice would you give them?
First of all, I'd say be patient with yourself.
Yeah.
It's okay to feel confused or overwhelmed, even scared. You're not the only one going through this.
Yeah.
We're all figuring this out together. And remember, change takes time. It's a journey, not a destination.
So patience,
Yeah.
but also action, right? What are some practical steps people can take?
One thing is to just, I don't know, explore. Take some time to figure out what you really care about. What are your values? What are you interested in? What makes you excited? Try new things, take classes, meet new people, that kind of stuff. It's all about rediscovering yourself.
Rediscovering yourself.
Yeah, outside of work.
What about people who are worried about losing their jobs? Or about the future of work in general?
Focus on what you can control. Learn new skills, the kind of skills that can be used in different jobs.
Okay.
Network with people, build relationships, stay up to date on what's happening in your field. The more you do those things, the better you'll be able to handle whatever changes come your way.
So it's not about holding on to the past.
Right.
It's about being flexible, being curious,
Exactly.
being open to learning new things.
This isn't just about surviving. It's about thriving.
Wow.
It's about creating a future where work actually has meaning, where it's something you enjoy.
That's inspiring.
I think so too.
Yeah. So we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We talked about the economy, politics, technology, how different generations see work, and even how all of this affects us personally.
It's a lot.
It is, but it's important stuff. We've
Okay.
talked about the challenges, but we've also talked about the opportunities, the chance to create something new and better.
Absolutely.
I think the biggest takeaway for me is that the future of work isn't something that's just happening to us. It's something we're all creating together.
We have the power to shape it
Exactly. It's a chance to rethink everything.
and make it better.
So, to everyone listening, keep asking questions, keep exploring, keep diving deep.
And don't be afraid to imagine something different.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
It was fun.
We hope you learned something and that you're feeling, I don't know, maybe a little bit inspired to go out and create your own future of work.